Since 2003, this is The Sports Source. With your host, John Pennington.
The Sports Source is presented by Junk Be Gone, Pipe Wrench, and the Garza Law Firm.
The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source here in the Junk Be Gone studio. We're happy to have you with us. We got a lot of stuff to cover today. Tennessee wins their 25th game of the season yesterday on Senior Day. We'll talk about their tournament expectations. Is the number one seed still on the table? We'll look at the SEC tournament bracket. We'll talk about all the seniors, especially Zakai Ziegler. Where does he rank in terms of all-time favorite Vols? Spring practice got underway this week, so we're going to talk about Ricky Gibson, that situation, Nico Iamaleava, the offensive line, the receiving corps. Big changes at another rival conference. Is that going to change the way things are done in the SEC? Is it more upheaval coming our way? We got a rapid fire segment with a bunch of news in college football. Lady Vols stumble into the tournament. Baseball Vols throw a no-hitter. Let's just get into this show. First segment brought to you by our friends at the Garza Law Firm. And folks, when you need an attorney, there's nothing more important in the world than finding a good attorney. It puts your mind at ease, gets things off on the right foot in terms of moving forward. And if you find a good local attorney, well, there you go. Now you know somebody who knows all of the players in the local judicial system. That's a leg up as well. So you got two legs up. Find a good attorney, find one that's local. Well, that's easy. Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. GarzaLaw.com to learn more. Been a part of this community for a long, long time. And that's why so many turn to Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. You should too. Check them out this week. All right. Vols take care of business. Well, I guess I don't introduce these guys. I was away for a week. I'm out of practice. We got Vince Farrar right here. We got Will West right here. We got former D1 basketball player and Vol coach Mark Pankratz right here. Jimmy Himes right there. And we got one more waiting in the wings. Now, Tennessee won their 25th game of the year yesterday on Senior Day, 75-65, the win over South Carolina. A bounce-back win after the loss at Ole Miss, which Vince, Jimmy, we did something on the Sports Source Digital Network this week where we taped it on Wednesday and said, not going to be a surprise if you go down to Ole Miss and lose, coming off an emotional win here. So that was not shocking. Still, got things back in working order there in the second half, put them away by 10. Mark, your takeaways on yesterday's victory.
I think from an X's and O's standpoint, we are who we are, right? Defensively, we're going to be pretty dominant on that side. I was most excited about the personnel that showed up yesterday. Jahmai Mashack, he's going to be in the game a lot because of his defensive prowess, has 15 points, knocks down another three-point shot. Cade Phillips, the way that he stepped up with Akbar being in foul trouble was big. And then Justin Gainey continues to be a guy that can give us some firepower offensively. So those guys stepping up despite Ziegler being in foul trouble and Akbar. We talked all year about the lack of depth. Those three guys showing some depth on the offensive end was enlightening for the NCAA tournament.
I thought it was encouraging that Tennessee won without Ziegler playing that well. He didn't score until the last 2 minutes. He was 0 for 2 from the field. He missed his first 3 free throw attempts. And Barnes benched him a couple of times because he got frustrated with him. He fouled a three-point shooter. But they won anyway. Yeah. And they did that against Florida, too, where they won anyway. So it tells me that if he gets in foul trouble postseason, Tennessee still is good enough to overcome that, where I'm not sure going into the year if I would have felt that way.
Takeaways.
Yeah, I think it was positive, the points in the paint. South Carolina was willing to go in there, and they were tough, and they made some tough shots, and they had – Pringle was kind of tough to handle, but they still had success inside. Those alley-oops to Cade Phillips are terrific, obviously career high for him. Ziegler still did some things, obviously has such a great connection with Phillips and Akbar, at the rim and those lobs. So Gainey continues to drive the lane. I love when Chaz Lanier is trying to take guys off the dribble and open up the two-point game and the attack at the rim. Those are all things that are very much positives for Tennessee. Overall, though, I didn't think it was an overly inspiring performance. I thought they just kind of got through it and did what they need to. Still a little worried about the regular slow starts and having to turn things on in the second half.
Yeah, I'm going to urinate right in the Cheerios because I did not think that was a great performance for Tennessee. You got to win because you played the worst team in the SEC. That's a bad basketball team. You beat them by 10, which is nice. You blew a lead again, which is concerning to me. I think we're seeing a recipe to cause problems for Tennessee with Okpara, and especially in these last 2 games. That's concerning to me. And I also think, man, Sakai is not a great shooter, so they have to figure out, but he's a great distributor. I just think I don't see people who are aggressive enough with the basketball in the half court. I don't understand when you're kind of running, when you're playing in space and you're putting up points. Tennessee got to like that 10-minute mark. They were on pace for 80 points. And then Rick Barnes tells Zakai to slow it down, be more patient, look for that, and then go on a large scoring draft in the final 10 minutes. So I was drought in the final 10 minutes of the first half. Yeah. It's just whenever I see that, I'm like, okay, you won, but there's winning's a great deodorant. The problems are there, and I don't know that if you're playing a better team, you didn't lose 2 in a row yesterday.
First of all, I'd like the waiter to take the Cheerios back. Second of all, I chalk some of that, again, I wasn't surprised in the least about the Ole Miss loss. Again, because of the situation. You saw Auburn do the exact same thing. They win the SEC and then they go and get crushed on the road against A&M. It happens. Yesterday, I chalked some of that up to it's emotional senior day. I think they always have an issue on senior day. I just think you come out, especially when you got 7 guys out there, 6 of them who play. I think that's part of it. Now, are you right about their flaws? Yeah, we've seen their flaws all year. My thing is, though, if we were doing this show in Tuscaloosa, you'd be sitting there slicing and dicing Alabama to bits and pieces, don't you think? I just think we look at this team and act like they're the worst team in the world. To me, we do this with football, and I'm good with it. But basketball, I just think basketball is what it is. I look at these teams, I think if Tennessee gets the right draw and they get on a roll, they'll be fine. I'm not overly panicking about their flaws because I look across the SEC and I see flaws, just about everywhere but Auburn.
My concern is that the flaws, people are finding new ways to take advantage of them. The flaws that this team has, and that they're not learning from their mistakes. And this is a team that I think, because there are no dominant teams.
We're 1 week removed from them beating Alabama, though.
Yeah, that's great. But you hit a nice last-second shot, and Alabama was stupid for the last 6 minutes of the second half offensively. So it was a nice win. It's a good win, and this is going to happen in basketball. I have a concern that we're seeing teams learn to exploit these flaws that we all see in Tennessee. And while they're a good team, and I love Barnes, and he's great, and he's a Hall of Famer, I have concerns that we're seeing some of these problems rear their head and maybe people are highlighting them a little bit more.
The one thing that I've not seen really much at all is Zakai getting foul trouble 2 of the last 3 games, right? In his career, he's not really gotten in foul trouble. He's gotten in foul trouble against Alabama, and you saw him get in foul trouble on Saturday. That's because either one, teams are starting to drive it at him more and more, knowing that they're going to put pressure on him to get fouls. Officiating may be changing as we're getting into the NCAA tournament. Yeah. That's Akbar blocking shots, getting in foul trouble. That's the concerning part for me. We are who we are at this point. I'm not overly concerned about can we make it to the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. I just think offensively, I think we slow it down at times that allow us to have those bigger lulls on the offensive end that I do think more other teams have than we give notice to because of where we're living. But this team is playing better basketball.
Well, wait a second. Let me back this up. So in the past, I've always hammered Tennessee for having the droughts. Now I'm the guy who's not putting the droughts on. I'm not noticing the droughts on other teams. We went and showed the numbers this year. Tennessee's droughts are actually fewer than the other teams in the SEC.
Yeah, I'm saying the other teams are having droughts too. I'm saying we're living in the Knoxville bubble.
Which is fair.
Yeah. So you're being negative. Yeah. Which let me also say this as someone who's routinely negative. One. People who's called routinely negative. There's no such thing as negative. The truth is just the truth. There's, you can take it one way or the other. I have no problem with you saying it. I'm just pushing back a little because I think you hone in on Tennessee with a laser focus that I think we could do it with a lot of teams in the SEC.
I have a concern these last 3 games, teams are figuring out ways to exploit them in new and unique ways.
Gotcha.
Well, if Tennessee made the free throws, the game wouldn't have been that close.
That's true.
So that was one of the issues. They missed the front end of several 1-and-1s. They were 9 for 21 at the foul line. And Rick Barnes talked several times after the game about we could have pulled away, but we kept missing free throws. So that was a part of it. This also struck me as being interesting. South Carolina, their first 15 field goal attempts, 14 of them were threes. And they only made 2 of them.
Right.
And yet Tennessee wasn't able to really pull away much when South Carolina was having trouble putting it into the basket.
To your point about living in the Knoxville bubble, you know what they were talking about after the Duke game last night? Was they were excited that Duke had to play North Carolina close because Duke has won their last 10 ACC games by 25 points. Yeah. So Duke is having an incredible year, but they're concerned that they're not playing close enough games. On our end, I think we've learned how to overcome some adversities. We've been in a lot of one-possession basketball games late in the second half that a lot of teams throughout the country haven't had to be exposed to.
I guess I'm looking at this team, and it's better than I thought it would be. They are better this year than I thought they would be. I didn't think you'd be sitting here with 6 losses on the year. I didn't think you'd win 25 games again. And by the way, let's say that very quickly. We've blown past it. Mike Wilson of the Sentinel tweeted this out yesterday, and this is the 4th straight season Tennessee's won 25 games. Before Rick Barnes got here, they had 3. Now, granted, you're playing more games these years, in this day and age. The season's longer. You've added more crap games to start, although Barnes does play a pretty good non-conference schedule typically. But 25 wins for the 4th straight year, that's an incredible achievement for this school. But I didn't think they would be this good this year, so I'm sitting here looking at them going, can they play with Alabama? Yeah. Can they play with Florida? Yeah. Can they play with Auburn? Clearly they did. Well, who else are you going to throw at them? So I get what you're saying. This sucks, this sucks, this sucks, that sucks, this sucks. I don't argue. But I think I could do that with everybody, and they've learned to play with all these teams despite their flaws.
But my concern is I think these things are easier to clean up, and I have a concern that they're getting worse. Does that make sense? The wound is opening more and more each week as we get towards the end of the season.
And as we get closer to NCAA tournament time, we start feeling like we've been down this path before, and we feel like we're having a good season, and then the rug gets pulled out because we shoot it bad, and it happens across the country. But when we've been here the last 4 years, when they've been winning 25 games, I think that's what people are starting to feel.
Well, and in the end, you're the one's going to come back and go, see? Because they're not going to win this whole thing. No. Anybody who thinks they're going to the Final Four, they're going to win this whole thing. Hey, I'll let Bob Hodge bring some cooked crow in. I'll eat the crow. He'd eat it raw. I'd eat some cooked.
Need to cook it.
But I'd happily do it. But this team's not going to win a championship. So when they do go out, you're going to be able to say, see, aha, and you're going to be right. So I'm not trying to fight you on this. I'm just thinking that it's senior day. You just finished, 25-6. Maybe cut them some slack today?
I just think this is the first Tennessee team I can remember in my life that I believe can win the whole thing because there aren't elite basketball teams in college basketball right now. But you have to fix these things if you want to get there, and there's no effort to fix those things.
Now we've got
that's concerning me.
Now we've got to the crux of it. You think they're better than I do.
Yeah.
So I think you're being negative.
Well,
you think
also
I'm
just
being
think
positive.
college basketball's not good this year.
There we go. All right. It's garbage?
I wouldn't say garbage.
All right. When we come back, let's talk about Vols seniors and discuss Zakai Ziegler, where he ranks in Vol history in terms of popular players. Boy, last 25 years, I can only think of 2 other names that I've even put in there with it. We'll discuss that. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. When you look at this set, the materials the set they're built with came from A.G. Hines Company. When you see all of our nice new sets, the poker room, the bar room, the lounge area, when you see all that down there in our new Sports Source Digital Network set, all the materials came from A.G. Hines Company. Folks, if you are building anything, do-it-yourself project to a new home, you need to start by visiting A.G. Hines Company and the Hines family, especially my friend Gordon Hines, just a great friend to me and a great person. Start your project at A.G. Hines Company. All right, Ryan Callahan joins us right now. Ryan, thanks for being here today. Appreciate you. Just in time to talk about the Vols seniors. Mark, I'll let you start. I want to talk about 2 of the guys who've been here at least longer. I mean, you had 7 guys who were honored yesterday, including a lot of guys who transferred in this year, but 2 guys who've been here for at least more than 1 year, Jordan Gainey and Jemai Mashak, and their development.
Yeah, well, development is key. I mean, I think they've really grown as players. Mashak's, he embodies everything that who Coach Barnes is, the selfless defensive player. We're living in a moment right now where he had a game winner versus Alabama, but what he did defensively was immense for this ball club over his time here. And then, Gainey has really improved. I mean, you look at the way his motor's improved defensively, and then he's been a guy that's gotten us out of a lot of jams this year offensively, being able to put the ball in the basket for us.
And I want to talk, we kind of went long in that last segment with us talking out our issues. Want to focus in on Zakai Ziegler. Ryan, I'll let you start here. I was going to say, in the last 25 years in terms of popularity, Chris Lofton, obviously, and Dane Bradshaw was a glue guy who everybody loved. I mean, Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield, popular. I don't want to take I'm sure there are other guys I'm forgetting, but in terms of the last quarter century, it's hard to put anybody above Zakai Ziegler when what this fan base has developed with him. the fire that he had, his family home, and the fan base comes together for him. He was a guy who a lot of these fans, same fans who love him now, didn't want. It's like, why are you signing this 3-star nobody? Barnes and these guys spotted him at a tournament and said, who's that guy? Boom. So just the story of Zakai Ziegler, where does he rank in terms of popular Vols?
He's a tough one because, like you said, I think some people, it depends on what's important to you in choosing your favorite players. I think Dalton Connect, for some people, ranks pretty high, even in 1 year, because of how special he was. Grant Williams, I think, high on that list for a lot of people, partly because he's been a success in the NBA, too. I think when you look at a guy like Ziegler, though, he's been there for so long. It just feels like it's been more than 4 or 5 years. So I just think he's high on that list. Is he above Dane Bradshaw or Chris Lofton? I don't think so, but I think he's right in that discussion, and he's special because he's undersized, he's scrappy, he's all the things people love to see in a player that's he's an overachiever and an underdog. So I think all those things make him lovable, and it's even easier when you know he's the coach's favorite player, essentially.
I think that he has a connection with the fans that I would not say Chris Lofton had or even Dane had while Dane was playing, because Bruce was always the one that was the conduit for the program to the fan base, whereas Rick Barnes let Zakai talk. And Zakai, if you ever spoke to him, was not a guy who was very introverted, shy, I would say downright shy. And he really became a guy that was willing to connect with the fans and have a relationship and have relationships like that within the community and do things like that, even though it required him to get out of his comfort zone to do that. And I think he probably is the most popular over the last 25 years.
There was a lot of compassion directed his way when they had the apartment fire. They started a GoFundMe page. I don't remember what the goal was, but they had raised like $10,000 in the first few minutes. They ended up raising $363,000 for him. Yeah. And he said that his family had never had that kind of support anywhere when they were in New York. And so he made the comment, I'm from New York, but my home is Knoxville. And I think that resonated with a lot of fans, that they reached out with him at that time. The way he plays, how scrappy he is the underdog. He's 5'9", and people have gravitated to him because of that, and the fact that he's been here 4 years. If you listen to the cheers yesterday at Senior Day, the two loudest cheers were for the guys that stayed here 4 years. Yeah,
and that's why I think his legacy is only going to grow, because there's not going to be many 4-year guys in college basketball anymore with the transfer portal. And I do think, Will, I think you hit it on the head. Even before Dane and Chris Lofton, there wasn't the social media. You couldn't really go out and be in the community. You couldn't run basketball camps in your community and be paid for it. So, like, they were kind of in their own bubble on campus. And
Chris Lofton's a very quiet guy anyway. Yeah, whereas Dane's a loudmouth, of course. I can say that. For those that don't remember, Dane was here on this show years ago, before Mark. Yeah. But, yeah, it is a different world. In terms of, I mean, you saw that, we haven't mentioned it, but Jemai Mashak, in terms of the things you could do differently, started an account to a food drive to get people to give money to help feed people here in East Tennessee.
Second Harvest Food Bank.
It's gone crazy.
He's done it for a while, and it really went nuts. Yeah.
I think it was aiming for like 7,000. It went over. It's over 40 and closing in on 50, I think. But you haven't had that kind of an opportunity before. But the Zakai Ziegler thing. I don't want to sell somebody short, and Ryan's right. Some people just like, well, he was the best player, so he's most popular. But in terms of a connection with the fan base, I think Ziegler's hard to beat.
I'll tell you why I put him behind Lofton and Bradshaw. And it's a fair discussion.
Because you're a hater, like
I am. No. I just think fans tend to, when you think of a player, you go back to moments. And Lofton and Bradshaw had those great moments. Everyone remembers the layup against Florida for Bradshaw and the clutch 3 in the NCAA tournament for Lofton. Ziegler's been part of some great teams, but I don't know if he's had those kinds of moments that are going to stick with fans as much. They make the Final Four this year, that changes, something like that. But I just think that team was so special because it changed the culture of Tennessee basketball. This is going to be in the span of a lot of great teams. It's just going to be 4 years in a long run of some pretty good Tennessee teams.
Well, I just mentioned Barnes has won 4 straight years of 25 games. That's Zakai Ziegler.
Yep.
That's right.
So in terms of the all-time wins list for guys who are here for 4 years, he's got to be up there, clearly.
I have a neighbor, I don't know that she's a big fan of basketball, but she asked me, when are they going to retire Zakai Ziegler's number, because I love him. Yeah. So he's connected with a lot of fans like that.
And that's Chris Lofton's number, by the way.
and he knows it.
I started to say that they won't anyway because it doesn't match their silly criteria. If you haven't hung Tony White's number yet, then you're not going to hang Zakai Ziegler. So that's one thing we ought to change. Just Let them hang numbers and stop the criteria crap. When we come back, let's look at the SEC tournament bracket and talk seeding, shall we? Is the number 1 seed still on the table? Let's discuss. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by the River Cove Campground. If you're one of the millions of Americans who love to camp or love to RV, then you need to check out rivercovecampground.com today. Now is the time to book a spot right on the Little Pigeon River with premium amenities for all. Book it today, whether you're wanting to travel in the fall, whether you're wanting to camp in the summer, whether you're wanting to do it in the spring. Today is the time to get to Uncle Jim's River Cove Campground. You do it by getting to rivercovecampground.com. All right, time for our poll question. I thought this would be a fun one today. Oh, okay, here we go. If forced to choose, which would you want for Tennessee's basketball team? First, there's a man sleeping. That's an early exit from the SEC tournament. And rest, 27%. Well, that was 50-50 before the show. And now it's 27% people just getting online and doing it. Or 73% of you say, guy with the foam number 1 finger, I want a long run in the SEC tournament and a 1 seed. Okay, we've debated that on this show and other shows all week long. I think you're a guy who'd rather have the rest, right, rather than the number 1. I agree. I am too.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'd rather be closer to home in the first or in the Sweet 16.
Where that's going to drop in. And you like the number 1 seed for
To
first time.
Cavaliers, though, I would be somewhere in between. You get a win, and
No
but-
Cavaliers.
No, the rest I think is more important.
Oh, I thought you wanted the number 1 seed.
Well, yeah.
You did earlier in the week.
Yeah.
Winning it all, winning it all doesn't guarantee you that the way they sit right now.
Generally, the rest, though, is what I would.
Yeah, I'll take the rest. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at the SEC tournament bracket. There we go. Tennessee is the 4 seed, and basically the other 3 teams still in the running for number 1 seed, or the other 2 teams. That's Florida and Alabama. They're also double byes, won't play until Friday. Tennessee will play either A&M, Texas, or Vanderbilt, and if they win, they go into the semifinals, and they will get a rematch with Auburn, who they lost to by, 2 points earlier in the year. So when you look at that path, when you look at that layout, in terms of the question, is a 1 seed still on the table? I think it definitely is.
I do too. My argument would be if you beat Texas A&M, which would be another quad 1 win, if you then beat Auburn, and then you either beat Alabama or Florida to win the SEC championship, yes. Now, the counter to that would be before you play the SEC championship game, if they already made up their mind,
Right.
that would be a concern. But I think they would leave room for either moving Alabama or Florida off the 1 line to the 2 and move Tennessee up. So I'm going to say yes.
Mark, is it still available?
Yeah, it's absolutely still available.
I don't necessarily think you have to win the whole thing. Getting back to, we're going to show in the next segment. I'm going to show you Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama updated net rankings and the strength of schedule. They're all kind of neck and neck. It wouldn't surprise me if the committee said, "All right, of these 3 teams, first one out gets the number 6 seed overall in the tournament. There are 2, and then the next 2 teams, whoever goes further, gets the 1 seed. And that way, whoever wins, if it's 2 of them getting to the championship game." If Tennessee gets to the championship game against Alabama or Florida, they'll just say, loser gets the top number 2 seed, winner gets the number 1 seed.
I could see that.
I mean, it's possible.
My thought is maybe I'm a little too. I've been burned too much by what we've seen in the past, where Tennessee wins on Sunday and it seemed to make no difference and things like that. I think it might take a lot. I think Tennessee needs to beat Auburn. I think that's a key because they don't have that win against Auburn. I think Florida might need to lose on Friday or something like that. It might take an early exit from one of those teams to help Tennessee. Tennessee needs that win over Auburn, though, I think, to strengthen its case enough to make the jump from where they are now to at number 4.
Remember last year, all of these teams that had byes lost. And so that what do the other teams do? What if Florida and Alabama? If Florida and Alabama, they go one and done. You win 1, maybe 2 games, then maybe the championship isn't necessary at that time. It all depends on what everybody else is doing in that seesaw. And how do they view the SEC this year? Is it they view everybody so close that maybe, like to Jimmy's point, they predetermine the bracket anyway as it is to where it doesn't make a big difference? We don't know how they're going to handle this stuff.
Well, and that's why I'm saying if 2 of those 3 teams, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, make the championship game, I don't think there's any doubt. They slot that thing as winner gets the 1 seed, loser gets the 2 seed. And I do agree with Ryan. Florida right now has a number 1 seed. Everyone thinks so because of their record more than their strength of schedule or their net ranking. It's not miles better. Strength of schedule is worse. It's their record. I think they need to go out first. If they do,
Yeah.
then I think you're in the mix. I don't know that you have to win the whole thing to get the number one.
Here's the other piece of it. What question would be, which is more important, rest or a win versus Auburn? If you beat Texas A&M and then you go play Auburn, to the fan base, to the Barnes Pearl comparison, what's more important, rest to the fans and have put in position to go further in the NCAA tournament, or for Barnes to beat Pearl and advance in the SEC championship?
Here's another factor. Auburn has looked, since they clinched the regular season championship, they've lost. Yeah. So what's going to be their interest level when I think it's a lock to me that they would be...
Oh, they're lock number one.
Yeah, number one overall.
Yeah.
So how interested are they going to be to win that tournament? Now, Bruce Pearl's been really good at that tournament, so maybe they do get a switch. But what if they're not interested and they go one and done? Then maybe you don't play Auburn, and maybe it's an Ole Miss or Texas or or somebody else that you play that maybe doesn't give you the boost if you get to Saturday.
How many times has he won the SEC tournament down there at Auburn? Twice?
Once against Tennessee.
Yeah.
Did he win another one down there? Because he didn't win one here.
But that's what BP is. BP can turn the switch on, right? When they accomplish something, the switch will come off. But when it's time to go, he's ready to get guys going. That's why also the NCAA tournament. They're in the tournament, they have a good run, and then they don't make the tournament. That's how he's philosophy.
So how do you think he'll play it with Auburn with the tournament? Do you think he's going to go to win, or do you think he's going to kind of want
Especially
rest?
coming off a couple losses, he'll have him ready to roll.
Okay.
Especially if he's playing
And
Tennessee.
depth.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, let's take a look at the national projections. We've got a graphic with Joe Lenardi's. We've got a whiteboard because Jerry Palm just updated his. We've got the net rankings and everything I just mentioned to you. Let's talk more about this and look at what some of the projections are for Tennessee in the tournament when we come back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. We've already sprung forward, and I hate that. Let's get our government to get together on one thing and get rid of the stupid clock changes. But we've sprung forward, and that means it's time to start thinking about termite inspections and termite treatments. Time to start thinking about mosquito treatments for your yard. And when you do that, well, think Southeast Termite and Pest Control. They take care of my house. They take care of yours as well. SoutheastTermite.com. And heck, I always talk about they can take care of your house. They can take care of your business as well. Get in touch with the Haynes family this week. They've been doing it since 1971. All right, let's take a look at the most recent brackets that were posted by Joe Lenardi today. He has Tennessee in the East Regional. He has them as the 2 seed. Overall, on the left are his number 1 seeds. He's got Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida. Florida's out in San Francisco. So that last number 1 means you travel to the West Coast. But anyway, Tennessee is in the East Regional, which would wind up in Newark. He's got them as a top seed. Or he's got the top seeds Duke, Tennessee, and Iowa State and Purdue, who I'm tired of seeing Purdue in tournaments. But Tennessee against South Alabama in the first round, and then if they get by that, they would face the winner of BYU and Georgia. And it used to be you couldn't face a conference foe until like the regional semifinals or the regional finals. Now, if you're putting 15 to the 16 SEC, if you're letting the whole SEC in, you're going to face them early on. Mark Pankratz, your thoughts on the bracket you see there very quickly.
BYU is scary. I mean, they got some crazy athleticism. You can shoot the basketball. That's a tough matchup.
Yeah, BYU is terrifying. One, because they're exactly what Mark said.
Terrifying.
They also shoot a lot of threes, and I get concerned because Tennessee's not a great shooting team. But sometimes they don't always realize that when you see a team start hitting threes,
do you start firing them too?
Yeah. Yeah, BYU is the team. Georgia won 4 straight. We'll see what they do in the SEC tournament, but that would not be easy. I don't think either. But BYU is the team that jumps out there.
Yeah, definitely, but I think we got to remember all these second round matchups are going to look tough. It's such a deep field these days. You're not going to face anything easy past the first round.
So that would be starting in Lexington. So it'd be an easy drive up for Tennessee, and if they play Georgia fans. Plus, it'd be interesting to see BYU going to Lexington to see their old coach, Mark Pope. Of course,
that's just a coincidence.
He wouldn't be there.
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah. All right, and then let's come to me, because we're going to have to throw out a graphic that a friend of mine made for me, and sorry, we're going to have to use the whiteboard instead. Jerry Palm updated his bracket just since the show started, basically. He's got Tennessee as the number 2 seed in the Midwest. Now, is that Cleveland? Which is the Midwest Regional?
Indianapolis, right?
Indianapolis, okay. So that would end in Indianapolis. He's got Tennessee versus Robert Morris It'd be tough for one guy to beat an entire Tennessee team, but Robert Morris is in there. In the second round, though, you see the names Kansas and Indiana. The name Indiana doesn't scare you. The name Kansas and all their talent scares the hell out of me. There's terrifying. I would be more worried about Kansas preseason number 1, just flipping the switch and turning it on, than even I would BYU. And then number 1 in that region is Houston. But your thoughts on Kansas and Indiana in the second round?
I like that draw better for Tennessee. Kansas has underachieved this year. I understand the thought and definitely agree that they could flip the switch and that concerns you. Yeah. But just based on how they've played to this point, I'd rather face that bracket than the first one.
I totally agree. What jumps out is you could see Hunter Dickinson again. Who you've seen in the NCAA tournament when he was at Michigan, and that's a big. Now, he doesn't always play inspired, doesn't always play well. But who knows? They have that ability maybe to turn it on. But I think the other way.
There's no way I want a piece of Kansas.
No.
I mean, Hunter Dixon, we struggled to guard them. We struggled to guard any big guys. They've been there before. They've been in big moments. They've underperformed all year. They got something to prove.
You've got a coach who's won it all.
I don't want any piece of Indiana would be fine because they beat us in that little preseason game. We'd be fired up for that. But I don't want any piece of Kansas.
Yeah, no, look, Kansas has better players than Tennessee does. Just point blank, that's a better roster. And Bill Self has been there and won the whole thing. Dickinson scares me, so yeah, I'm with Mark. I would not want any part of Kansas at all.
Well, the thing with Tennessee is you could see them making a long run, or you can see them losing to any of these teams in the second round.
Yeah.
That's how wide the range is. I
Which
think
is
they
true
have,
for most teams. Yeah,
that's true. But I do think that when you start looking at teams in the second round, you could start talking yourself into, whoa, this is a little bit dangerous, especially when you're in that 2 spot.
Agreed.
The 2
spot. Agreed. All right. So we got 2 guys who fear BYU more than Kansas, 3 guys who fear Kansas more than BYU. Nobody's really sweating Georgia or Indiana as much, and nobody's sweating South Alabama or Robert Morris, which there's your doom coming at you. Remind you to go ahead and play the poll. Let us know what you think, whether you want Tennessee to get the extra rest or whether you want to go on the number 1, get on the run and go to the number 1 seed. Oh, before we do that, let me go ahead and get this last graphic in here. I'm sorry. Here we go. This is what I was talking about in the last segment. The final number 1 seed, Florida is 27-4, so they've got 2 more wins than Tennessee. They've got 3 more wins than Alabama. Net ranking, they're 4, Tennessee 5, Alabama 6. Strength of schedule, though, Florida just doesn't compare. Alabama's is 2. I'd forgotten they were better than Tennessee. Yep. It's Alabama 2, Tennessee 5, Florida 28th. Quad 1 wins. It's 8-4. I think the Tennessee one's been. I think that's been updated. That or somebody's fallen out.
Tennessee has 10 now, and Florida has 9. It fluctuates based on what your opponents do.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, all 3 of those. I think Tennessee's still in the mix for 1 seed, as we said in that last segment. If anything, you look at Florida's getting a boost because they're 27-4. Their record is simply better. But I think I would take away because their strength of schedule is worse than the other 2. And Tennessee's kind of in the middle. So to me, I just think whoever goes furthest in this tournament is probably going to get that final number 1 seed.
I think the wild card here, Vince and I were talking about this, what happens on the other side of the bracket from Tennessee? If Alabama beats Florida and Tennessee to win the SEC tournament and then they beat Alabama or beat Auburn on the road or beat them, that's an impressive way to finish the season.
If I'm the selection committee and I'm looking at this and all these teams are that equal, I'm just saying I'm looking at the tournament. Tournament's going to decide it. We'll let you boys play it out. You figure it out. Whoever goes the furthest, you get the 1 seed. Whoever's out first, you get the bottom number 2 seed.
And they need to vocalize that because otherwise these end-of-the-year tournaments are going to be more minimized every year.
Yeah. Mark Pancratz, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. And when we come back, time to talk football. Spring practice has begun. We'll get into Ricky Gibson's situation. We'll talk to Nico Iamaleala next on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. We've been here talking about cilantro and how it can taste like dish soap to some people. Madisonville Marine does a great job in terms of, how's that for a divergence? Madisonville Marine does a great job of putting prices before you that cannot be beaten. And here's an example. If you get down there before March 31st, all these end March 31st, okay? But right now through then, with Yamaha outboard motors, you'll get a 2-year extended warranty. With G3 Suncatcher pontoons, you get rebates up to $2,500 off. G3 John boats and bass boats, rebates up to $2,000 off. Skeeter bass boats, rebates up to $4,000 off. All, if you get down there before March 31st. Nobody does a better job of putting great deals in front of you. Nobody has a better selection of boats, and that's why there's no better place to buy a boat than Madisonville Marine, Highway 411 North in Madisonville. All right, let me remind you of the poll. There it is. You can go ahead, use your smartphone, click the QR code right there beneath the Hearthside Bank logo, and let us know what you think. The vast majority, well, it's kind of evening back up a little bit. Long run and a one seed, 60%, 40% of you say you want an early exit and rest. You tell us what you think, and we'll let your say decide it for us. All right, back with Will and Jimmy here to talk a little football. Ricky Gibson, he and his camp let it be known he was going to transfer, and we all wondered, okay, is he going to show up for spring practice? Is Heupel going to play him at spring practice? If he does, that means they're paying them more than likely. Ricky Gibson's been at spring practice. He had already gotten a bit of a raise, NIL raise, earlier this year. Apparently, he's going to get another one because he's been out there. Thoughts on how this was handled, and does this mean that, all right, put that one to bed. Ricky Gibson, you don't have to worry about it. He's here.
I don't love that happened with Ricky Gibson, that it has to go public like that, but I also look at the number of guys that had to go somewhat public, at least, to get money out of Tennessee. I was told Ricky Gibson was making below market value. He wanted to renegotiate. They said, let's do it after the spring. Somebody else came in with a big offer that got him above market value. Tennessee at least had to get close. Looks like they did. But we've seen Cooper Mays. We've seen Dylan Sampson. We've seen Nico. We've seen Mike Matthews. We've seen, so many guys have to go public and threaten to leave or say something, put something on Instagram, that I can't help but think maybe Tennessee plays a little money ball with their NIL money. And this is just what players have to do to be able to get Tennessee to hurry up to the table and come off that check.
First off, if you have made an agreement, I don't think you should break it. Okay, so I don't like that. The
On
other
his
part
part.
of that, on his part, if there was an agreement, okay, I don't like that. But the other part is, he was in a pretty good negotiating position, right?
With Jermon McCoy.
Exactly. So you can't afford to not have both of those to start the year. I think Gibson's a really good cornerback. I think Gibson and McCoy would rank among the better quarterback tandems in the SEC if they play together. So you absolutely need him. I think that his camp, or he, saw that was a very good negotiating position that they were in. And so now I don't know how much money they're getting. I don't know that we'll ever know exactly how much. But I think it was very important for Tennessee to keep Ricky Gibson.
Is it weird is it just because we're here? I don't see this happening anywhere else. I don't see a bunch of Auburn kids or Florida State kids or Ohio State or Penn State kids that you see on On3 or on social media or 247 Sports that they're reporting this guy who's a starter is going into the transfer portal and then they don't. It seems pretty specific to Tennessee, and I also look at Tennessee. They don't have a GM. They don't have a sporting director. And is that one of the causes of this problem is you don't have someone handling these deals behind the scenes?
I should drag Ryan in here. We've talked. You should watch the Sports Source Digital Network. Ryan had this conversation not too long ago about the people behind the scenes making these decisions. But I will just say this: if you've got all the money in the world and you've got an open checkbook, which I'm repeatedly told Tennessee has, and nobody's got more money, blah blah blah, why are you having to do this? If that's the case, I still don't know that that's the case, but everybody tells me, oh, they got money, like they're oozing money. Okay.
So it's either they don't have that money
or
they're
they just
playing
don't like
money
to
ball.
spend it.
Yeah.
Well, they spent, I was told by two really good sources, about $15 million on their football roster last year. Now, do they have a lot more to spend? I don't know. But there were $5 million basically. It's been reported they're $5 million below Ohio State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound like you've got all the money in the world
It
and
does
you're
not.
oozing
No.
cash. And but that's what they say. All right. And I always listen to they when they say it. All right. All eyes are going to be on Nico Iamale. I've got to be quick with this one. Pro Football Focus a few weeks ago ranked him as the number 9 returning quarterback in college football. Now, he was 5th in the SEC. He's behind Diego Pavia at number 8, DJ Lagway at Florida, Arch Manning, Texas, Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. I think they had number 5. But Nico, the 9th best returning quarterback in college football. Either way, I think the roster is going to be a little worse this year. So I think he's going to have to lift all boats more than he did last year. Does he look like, a number 9 quarterback in the country could do that. Does he look that good to you at this point?
I didn't think he played that well last year. Now, and I don't think he's going to have a great supporting cast this year.
Exactly.
So at the end of the year, are we going to be saying he's a number 9 quarterback in the country? I'm going to say probably not. And I can't sit here and name all the other quarterbacks that I like more. There are some that I could name. But I think that without the supporting cast at receiver, I don't think the running game is going to be as good because they're retooling the offensive line with one exception. You don't have a running back, in my opinion, as good as Dylan Sampson. So he's going to have to carry the load.
Yes.
If he does, okay, then
he will have lifted all boats around him.
But
he didn't show me that last year that he's that guy.
He was a game manager last year. That's what he was. He was a game manager, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's can he take another step? I think he can. But I would not have him at number 9. I also don't know that I would have Arch Manning that high right now or DJ Lagway because Nico's done more than those two dudes. So he's proven more than they have, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to throw for 3,500, 4,000 yards this year.
I just didn't see him being the number 9 returning quarterback in the country. But then again, we shall see. I do think, though, your roster is not as good, so he's going to have to do more. Yep. So this is the year he's tested. If you're going to pay a guy, which now you've got quarterbacks making – what's the kid at Duke getting?
$4 million.
$4 million a year. So Nico's a steal. But when you're giving him what you gave him initially, you're paying for a guy that is supposed to be able to be transcendent, a guy that lifts everyone around him. This year he's going to have to if he's going to live up to that number. All right. When we come back, Vince is out here, Ryan's out here. We're going to talk about O-line, Jimmy just brought up. We're going to talk about the receiving core, another part that's going to have to help out Nico this year. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. You just saw his ad, Chris Smith Insurance. What would you think about an insurance agent who could help you in 2 different ways? One, he's a farmer's agent with great farmer's protection. And let me tell you, I use Farmers for some of my stuff, and they are fantastic. The amounts of coverage they can offer you, incredible. But also, if you can't find what you're looking for from Farmers, Chris is also an independent agent, which means he can provide additional options for you. So he's kind of a double agent. He can go 2 different ways there. That's Chris Smith Insurance. Chris helped me find a hard-to-find plan, so I know he can help you find the right plan for you. csmithagency.com to learn more. All right, back with Vince and Ryan. The Vols are having to replace 4 different starters on the offensive line. The receiving core returns about 35 catches, about 400 yards, and about 4 TDs, so not much on the receiving core. Which one's the bigger concern for you starting out, O-line or receivers?
Call me crazy. I think I'm going to probably disagree with more people on this. It's the offensive line for me because I think last year they were enough of a concern, and then you lose 4 starters from that group. Now, there are more reasons to maybe feel you've got more known commodities on this offensive line because you've got 2 additions from the transfer portal with starting experience, especially Wendell Moy Jr., 2-year starter at Arizona.
Your tackles last year, weren't they? Transfers in.
So that's the problem is that Lance Hurd, you have a track record. It wasn't very good this past year. You need him to take a big jump. Yeah. You're going to have a true freshman potentially starting at the other tackle in David Sanders Jr., very talented one, but still a guy who is a true freshman. And we see any true freshman in the SEC tends to take their lumps at some point. So that, and then you have a new center, and you're going to miss Cooper Mays and that consistency no matter who takes that job. So to me, I heard some people talking about Dylan Sampson at the NFL Combine saying he didn't do a lot of catching passes this past year. He had to help in pass protection a lot because they didn't trust that offensive line. Yeah. I think that's still the group I have more questions about, even though the receivers have had plenty of turnover too.
Vance.
Boy, it's hard. Just real quick to add to what you said. One, Nico's very dependent on his offensive line's protection last year and how he performed. Yeah. When the tackles played a little bit better during that stretch, you saw him kind of take that next step. And the other thing is we haven't seen Glenn Ellerby guys really that he recruited kind of rise up the roster and develop. Is that going to happen this year? Yeah. Obviously, David Sanders Jr. should be a starter, but they need some of that to happen on the offensive line. This is a very difficult question. I'm not going to Cavaliers it, but I'm actually going to go with the wide receivers. And Ryan mentioned the big difference maker for me is there are some known commodities on that offensive line. Where are they in the wide receiving group? I mean, you have Chris Brazel and you have Braylon Staley and you have Mike Matthews. Now, Mike Matthews is that 5-star talent that you would expect to maybe rise up to number 1. But outside of that, they play 3 receivers, Braylon Staley, all the freshmen, Amari Jefferson, and we don't see first-year receivers come into this program, transfers or recruits, make a big impact. I think the wide receiver position has been a big detriment to this offense. I think you have a better shot to kind of hold it together on the offensive line. I'm going to go wide receivers.
I'll tell you why I lean toward that on the wide receiver side. I just don't think what they're replacing was that special. I think Brew McCoy gets a lot of credit, but I don't think he gave you a lot of dynamics in the passing game. Squirrel White seemed to regress after his freshman year. I just think what you're replacing them with, Braylon Staley, a former top 100 prospect, Mike Matthews, a former 5-star, those are talented guys that plug them in, get a little more athletic at this position. I think you've got a chance to be pretty good.
I thought both of you guys would say offensive line. I really did. To me, I was going to say receiver. I think offensive line is a concern, but more so the tackles were your big problem last year in pass protection. I mean, you could have used help everywhere, but I thought your tackles were what held you back. Maybe Hurd gets better. We'll see with a freshman, let's start to say rookie, but basically it is a pro game, so rookie right tackle. But the receivers are what concerns me, because even last year with all the pass protection issues that they had at times, Nico had a lot of deep balls that were dropped. And if you catch those things, if you add another touchdown a game on a deep ball, that year is different. That is a different season. If you just throw in one extra touchdown per game, that may flip some games around. That flips the way games are played. So I look at the receivers and think, even with the trouble you had keeping him upright, keeping him from taking hits, he still managed to get rid of the ball enough to where, now there were a lot of times where he overthrew guys, especially early in the season too. But there were so many drops there that it goes back to the receiving core to me. That's where my concern is, and it's for all the reasons you've already stated them. How many new receivers have you seen step right into this system and do well? Not many. What kind of returning production do you have? Nothing. Chris Brazzell was supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread when he got here. Pro Football Focus last year had him down for 6 drops. That was more than anyone I've ever seen. And I think that's undercounting it too. So maybe he takes that step forward. I mean, if you wanted me to go back and look at drops, look at Jalen Hyatt the year before he wins the Biletnikoff. So maybe I'll always keep throwing that out there. Maybe this is the year that Brazzell puts it all together. Maybe it's the second year. But I saw nothing from Mike Matthews that made me think, oh boy, he's special. Looked okay to me. He just looked like another guy. Braylon Staley couldn't get on the field and didn't blow me away when he was out there. Maybe this is their year. But to me, that is the concern, more about the receivers than the offensive line. And I thought I would be the lone man out here saying receivers.
Yeah, I disagree with that, Matthews. I think he's going to be terrific. Now, is it year 2?
What did you see last year that looked terrific? I thought he looked like another guy.
No, I think he didn't get enough opportunities, honestly.
That catch in the Kent State game was big time.
Yeah. So
the Kent State, Squirrel White had one of those too.
When we saw this offense at its best with Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, having a deep threat unlocks this offense. And I think it can improve your offensive line because now you're a threat deep. That's, to me, the key and one that I wonder about the most. Do they have enough there to open this thing up?
I think Staley's the guy not enough people are talking about. Squirrel White is a little bit of a small guy. Got bumped off his routes a lot across the middle and the slot. I think Staley's a little bit stockier guy, can handle it, the contact across the middle there. I think he could have a bigger year than people are expecting.
All right, we'll see. We'll get back and talk about that later. I'm sure Will is over there thinking, where was this negative guy when we were talking basketball? All right. When we come back, let's do a little football rapid fire. We'll bring the whole group in. And Vince, you're getting out here to go call baseball, aren't you?
Yes, sir. They're pretty good. We'll see if they can continue playing well.
Keep the undefeated season rolling.
Oh, my goodness.
Vince, thank you, man.
Thanks, guys.
Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems, East Tennessee's #1 source for security needs. For your home, they offer wired and wireless systems, camera systems, gate and access control. For your business, they offer commercial security systems, fire alarm systems, testing, inspection services. Call VFL JJ Surlis and the Safety Systems team this week. I was out of town last week. Felt secure knowing that Safety Systems had my back here in Knoxville. SafetySystems.com. Okay, let's reveal the poll results. What'd you wind up saying? You want that long run, 63? I can't read. 62 to 38. All right, most of you want the long run on 1 seed. You don't care if they have the rest or not. You want that 1 seed. I got it. They've never had it before, so it does mean something for the program. I understand that. Rapid fire here, college football stuff. I meant to have a graphic with this that I didn't build because I'm an idiot. Will, if you take a composite, I went to VegasInsider.com and they show you MGM, FanDuel, Bally's, DraftKings, all of them up there. If you take the composite, Tennessee has the 8th best odds to win a national championship. in college football this year. You buying that?
No, I'm not buying that. I'll sell that as quickly as I humanly can. You're replacing 3 of your offensive linemen. You're replacing
4,
really good
really?
4 of your offensive linemen.
Starters.
One needed to go. You know what I mean? But you're replacing 4 starters on the offensive line, and you're going to be a top 10 team. That isn't a thing that happens in the sport of football. So, no, I'm going to hard pass on that.
I think that's the most ridiculous stretch since the one I called out last offseason. The James Pierce is the best player in college football. He's going to be the number 1 guy in the draft. And we sat here and said, where the hell is that coming from?
Yeah.
We said, he was a good player. Where'd that come from? And I'm saying that here, too. It's like, 8th best odds to win a national championship?
Vegas
Have you looked at the roster? What are you
Vegas
talking about?
does bait people if there's hype, like they did it with the Bears in the NFL last year.
They're just trying to get you to bet on it, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but still, between us, 8th best.
It's a playoff team with a returning quarterback. I think that's all it is.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the worst since Nico Iamaleava was the top 3 or 4 Heisman candidate
That too.
last year.
And you had that still going like a month into the season. All right, rapid fire for Jimmy Himes here. A few weeks ago on this show, we said, including you, Jimmy, you said Josh Heupel needed to hire some guys from outside his staff in order to get some new eyes, some new ideas, new blood in there. Well, he has added a couple of analysts this offseason. Landry Jones, the former Oklahoma quarterback, and Seth Littrell, or Littrell, we debated that back and forth, former North Texas coach who also worked with Josh Heupel at one point. Does that count, analysts?
I'm going to say yes, because they have been at other programs. They have seen other things. At North Texas, you're the head coach. You've probably seen some other ways to do things. I think Tennessee's offense got a little bit stale with, we're just running the same thing. I think they missed Alex Golish, who I thought brought some new ideas. So if they had all stayed at Oklahoma the whole time and been under him, I'd say no. But the fact that they have been at other places, I'm going to go with yes.
Okay, very good. Ryan, it's a longer one for you. I apologize. College coaches this offseason, a few weeks ago we told you this, college coaches this offseason proposed a way to stop faking injuries. And their deal was if a player had to be looked at, he would be pulled off the field for the rest of that series. And a team, a coach, could then use a timeout to buy that player back onto the field. And I liked it because it added an element of coaching decisions to the whole thing. It makes sense to me. Well, naturally, the College Football Rules Committee looked at it and said, nah, we got our own idea. Their idea is that if medical personnel has to come out and look at an injured player after the ball is set for the next play, that player's team will be charged a timeout. And if you don't have a timeout, it's a 5-yard delay of game penalty. Which is the better plan? Coach's plan, take the player off the field, or the rules committee, which is we'll slap you with a timeout?
I think the fair plan is the one the committee has come up with. But here's the reason. What I don't like is when you create a problem to solve another problem. I think the other plan, the coach's plan, actually creates a problem because players are then coming off the field for legitimate injuries. And that, to me, when you leave it open to interpretation like that and you're penalizing players who have legitimate injuries, that's where I have a problem with it. So I think the coach's idea, they came up with it for a reason. They think there needs to be a strong deterrent there, and I don't think they're wrong. I just think in this case, creating a problem to solve a problem, not worth it. So I kind of like the committee's idea a little bit better.
That's a good point on the fact that you may have guys hobbling off with a knee injury because they don't want to cost their team.
Yeah.
But I don't care. I don't like this one. Sorry for the kid with the bad knee. I don't like the new rules proposed because here's the thing. It's the key line that I included here. If an injured player has to be checked out medically after the ball is set for the next play. So you're just going to have a play stop, and then they're going to look over real quickly and go, fake it just faster before the ball is set. Plus, in certain situations, if I've got to stop that clock, I'll give you the time. I'll take the 5-yard delay. If you're out of timeouts, they give you a 5-yard delay of penalty. A delay of game penalty. I'll give you 5 yards in exchange, depending on the situation. But if I'm desperate to stop that clock, I'll give you 5 yards to stop the clock. I can make up the 5 yards. I can't put time back on the clock.
Also, the big asterisk to this is, as we discussed, it's if a player goes down after the ball is set for the next play. I think the hole in this whole plan is players are just going to go down earlier, and none of this is going to matter in a lot of cases anyway.
Yeah, that's not going to work. At point blank, that's just not going to work. So why are we even going to the whole dog and pony show?
The fast
to
fake.
pretend like it will, right?
Now, one thing, players are going to have to be trained to actually think these things through strategically, because you can't get the signal in from the sideline quickly enough sometimes. You actually got to think, I need to fall down. And players have to know, they got to have some football awareness.
Or you have 8 guys that all fall over at the I think Justin Hamilton, who used to be here on the show, he said that the call for that at Virginia Tech was scuba. Take a dive. Scuba. All right. When we come back, the ACC made a big move this week. Will the SEC follow suit? It could lead to more upheaval in college football. We'll explain it next. Come on back. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. March Madness is here. Don't spend another tournament sitting in those old chairs you have. Get yourself top-of-the-line home theater seats from Games and Things. Bigger, better selection of home theater seats than anyone else in East Tennessee. Visit their showroom, and you can see and test them out for yourselves. That's what I do. I'm in the market for home theater seats again. It's about every 8, 9, 10 years I got to go. And these things, and trust me, wear the heck out of these things. And they last you for a good long time, and they're just fantastic. OurGameRoom.com to learn more, or get down and see their showroom. Games and Things, the corner of Level Road and Kingston Pike. Okay, going to be quick with this. Everyone knew it was coming. It finally happened in the ACC this past week. Florida State and Clemson settled their lawsuits with the league, trying to get out of there. But the league agreed to an uneven revenue split. And the interesting thing here is it's being done by the teams with the highest TV ratings are going to get a bigger share of the league's TV money. So now that one league has gone there, how long is it going to be before Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State look for a bigger share and say, why are we giving this to Rutgers and Maryland and Minnesota and Indiana? Well, although Indiana had a good year, but you know what I'm saying. How long before the SEC teams, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, sit there and say, why are we giving Vandy an equal share in this? Why is Kentucky getting the same amount of money? Let me show you the average number of viewers for SEC teams last year. All right, so the numbers there are in millions of viewers per game. Georgia, 5.97 million viewers per game was what they had on average. That is number 1 in the nation. Alabama was number 2 in the nation. Texas, 4 in the nation. You see there. But kind of look on the left and kind of look on the right. So you can actually kind of cut it off there at 3 million. So you can see those top 7 schools, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, LSU, Texas A&M. Oklahoma would probably try it too. I think Auburn would say, well, we just had a down year. But you know they're going to look at that at some point and say, why is Florida State and Clemson getting a bigger share of their cash and we're not, when Vanderbilt's getting an average of 420,000 people to watch their games. I'm Alabama, I'm getting 5.4 million. Why are they making the same money I am? And don't tell me that they beat me this year. I don't care. So, is that coming to the SEC at some point, or is it too much of a, by golly, we love each other and we're pals?
The problem is that's the precursor to death of your conference. And so I don't think it will happen. I think what will happen is those 7 schools that don't bring anything to the table will just be gone. And you'll see the super conference happen at some point. Along with that ACC story, we saw the buyout drop to $75 million by 2030, which means there's an expiration date on the ACC. It will be the carton of milk in your fridge that you don't want to smell, and it'll end. And so I think what will happen is by the time we get to 2030, instead of the SEC having to give more money to Alabama, Mississippi State and Missouri just won't be in the same conference that Alabama and Tennessee are.
I don't think they're going to go the way of the ACC because I don't think there are any SEC teams that are trying to get out of the league. They're trying to get in. You got Texas and Oklahoma that just came in. So if you had a play of 2 teams saying, we're out of here unless you do this, I don't think that the league is going to go in that direction.
Well, I just wonder if the paradigm is the big boys say, we will leave unless you give us more money, or we'll boot you out unless you take less money.
Well, I'll go back to a point you made. Texas. They're always the team that's the bad conference member.
That's right.
Maybe they're the team that eventually rocks the boat. Maybe it's 10 years from now, but yeah, I could maybe see that. But yeah, Alabama, Georgia, to the point, nobody's looking to leave the SEC, so I think the SEC's in a better position. The Big Ten's the one I would wonder about. 5 or 6 schools carrying a lot of weight there. I can see that.
2030, the Big Ten Conference television contract ends. 2030, the ACC's
now has a buyout
goes down to just $75 million, which is less than 1 year of Big Ten television revenue.
So is that when North Carolina...
I think that's when the expiration date happens on the current conference situation that we see in conference football, and we'll go to the super conference then.
This is why the SEC does need Greg Sankey or whoever to be strong as a leader, because you've got tradition, you've actually got a geographic map that makes sense. You need to keep it that way and keep college football or keep college sports making some sense.
Very good. When we come back, the baseball Vols keep rolling along. The Lady Vols stumbling into the tournament. We'll talk about both as we wind down the show here on the Sports Source. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. I'm trying to bribe guys to do things for me. This is how you can follow us. First of all, we got our YouTube channel, where if you miss this show or you're out of town, you can always catch it on YouTube. The Sports Source YouTube channel is the orange channel. If you get in there and you search for the Sports Source Digital Network, the black channel pops up there. And we're doing, everybody here did stuff this week on the channel. Ryan and I came in and did a kind of an emergency talk about what are we talking about? The roster, Ricky Gibson situation, recruiting, that kind of thing. Jimmy, you came in and we talked about Rick Barnes and the job he was doing. Will, you do the Premier League show over there. We got gambling. We've got outdoor shows. We've got Mike Stranger's in there with John Wilkerson and myself. We did the Give Him Six show, where we look at the 6 greatest NCAA tournament wins in Tennessee history. Do me a favor. You helped me build this show. You did that. Help us build the Sports Source Digital Network. It's more programming for you. Don't cost nothing. All you got to do is subscribe, and it'll just tell you, hey, there's a new video. You may look at it and say, I don't have a stomach for Pennington today. That's fine. You just know it's there. Subscribe, Sports Source Digital Network. And then also you can follow us. We just launched a Facebook page, which, I'm only 30 years behind. But check that out, Sports Source Digital Network Facebook page. All right. Baseball Vols 15-0. On Friday, they threw their first no-hitter since 2002. 5 pitchers combined to do it. Ryan, this baseball story just keeps getting better. It's like, is there ever going to be an end to this roll? It just seems like if it's coming downhill, the snowball is now the size of Montana, and it continues to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and this is kind of, not to
Grand
downplay
slams
it.
left and right.
I was going to say, not to downplay it at all. We knew this team was talented, though. There was no question they were going to do this to this part of the schedule, in my opinion. Aside from the Houston weekend, that was the only part of the non-conference schedule that we thought, okay, maybe they won't steamroll them. They're just killing people because they're that much better talent-wise than everybody. So when they get into SEC play, we'll still find out more about just how good they are. But, yeah, this is pretty impressive what they're doing. And just the sheer volume of the home runs and everything they're hitting right now, it's showing you how much better they are than the rest of the field.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, okay, you expect them to crush the tin cans that are before them right now. But no hitters? Okay, you haven't done that since 2002. It just keeps building and building. It's remarkable.
It's the depth of this roster. This many pitchers, this many talented hitters. They had guys waiting behind really good players last year, and they're showing it now.
And Jimmy and Will, I'm going to give you something else. You get the unhappy one. Lady Vols have kind of slipped here of late. They lost 3 of the last 4 games. ESPN's bracketology has them as a 5 seed now, meaning they will go in their projection to Chapel Hill, where UNC will be the higher seeded team. My question for you: will last year's team, the one that got Kelly Harper fired, went out in the second round at North Carolina State, Raleigh. Will this team go farther than last year's team, which went out in the second round, NC State? Will they get past North Carolina in the second round, if that's what the bracket shows? Will they get to the Sweet 16?
I don't have confidence that they will. They've played poorly in several games late in the year. Even though they're playing a rotation of at least 10, they look to be a little bit tired with all the pressing that they've done. They also have games where they just shoot horrifically. So I don't think they'll get to the Sweet 16 based on what I've seen in recent games.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get there. And I said at the beginning of the season, this team will get to the Sweet 16 because I'd watched the Kim Caldwell system, and I said, that's going to work. And they don't have a lot of really high-level talent, but they had a good depth of talent that they had. They're not going to get there now. I just think something's going on. You've lost 3 or 4. Maybe they're tired. I don't know what it necessarily is. She's already had to adjust her system from, in the non-conference play, shooting 43 threes a game to now shooting about 20 a game. This just isn't a team, I think, that has the legs to be able to keep it up for a Sweet 16 run.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how much this, she's doing the team building now. She's got a good recruiting class coming in. She'll get the transfers and all that stuff. And you wonder what next year's team will look like when she's got more time to build one to fit her system. Or does she get into this league and say, I'm going to adjust my system? We'll see. Yeah. Ryan, thank you. All I've got room for was the... Sorry.
That's all right.
We got nothing. Jimmy, Will, thanks, guys. Appreciate all of you. Thanks to Vince. Thanks to Mark for being here. Thanks to you for watching the show every week. Check out the Sports Source Digital Network on YouTube. That would do us a big favor. It helps UT fans around the globe find us if you're subscribing and clicking like on those videos. See you next week, right back here on Selection Sunday.